Hi Blender fans and welcome to Blender once again. In today's tutorial we're going to be doing a low poly flower, the type that you actually see in many games, and we'll be using a texture which is found in the description below to make our low poly flower. So let's begin. And X of course will delete. So let's just delete this cube because we don't really need it. What we're going to be using in our image is we're going to be using an image texture. So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to actually do most of our editing in the UV editor just to make it easier. So we're going to add in a mesh, and the mesh is going to be a plane, and we're just going to scale the plane in the Y by 4 just to make a long thin plane. So I'm just going to scale that down, and what we're going to do is make this into a leaf. So we're going to add in a texture to this, and the texture we're going to add into it is called it's a ping texture, but it's also got an alpha map on it. So the alpha map just means that parts of the actual mesh are see-through. So let's just add the alpha map. So I'm just going to put new, and we're going to actually go down, whoopsie daisy, go down here to the base color, and we're going to add in what I call it an image texture. And the image texture we're going to actually use is the actual one that you can download, that's in the description below, and it's found on Pixabay, and it's a texture I created. So going to the texture, I've added an actual shortcut with my bookmarks which is covered in many tutorials, and this is actually on the flower texture, and this is my texture which you can actually download. So I'm getting the texture, and I've attached the texture, and what we're going to do now is actually go into UV editing, and we're going to go into UV editing like that. And what we've got here, we've got X, Y and Z. If you actually go on Z, then we're in top orthographic, and what we can do is actually go if you're not already in edit mode, you press the tab key until you're in edit mode, and you press the A key to select all, then U, and then what we're going to do is actually project from view. As you can see, what we've got now is we've got this actual plane, and we're just going to scale this up and G just like that, and scale in the Y direction until it's in the right place, and scale it in the X like that. If we go into the actual UV editing, into the actual viewport shading, even there you can see that it's still black, and the reason it's black is because the actual see-through parts of the actual image are not actually projected onto this yet, and we can do that quite simply in a minute or two. But what we're doing now is that we're just lining this just to make sure that this is about right, like so, and we're looking at the leaf. So press tab to come out of edit mode, and we're going to go into the shading one. Where is it? Shading up here, and we'll just actually look on there from the top, which you can actually use by going on this. You've got different views from here, but the Zed View is the actual one from the top, and it tells you what view you're in up there. So I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller and scale down so we can see it. What I'm going to do now is actually get to the alpha and connect the alpha into the alpha, and parts of this will become see-through when we alter one more little bit on our texture, which we'll do now. So we'll actually go into the actual material properties, go on the texture, and go down the ways, and go down and down and down. And what we need to change is we've got the actual blend mode down here, and we need to change this from opaque to alpha hashed, and we need to change this one to alpha clip. Settings might differ on your computer depending on what graphics card you've got, but basically just mess about with these until you find something that actually works for your plant. So we've now got something here. We've got see-through parts of our plant. As you can see, they are totally see-through. So we have made a pretty good leaf. And what I'm going to do now is actually go back into the layout window, and we're going to move the leaf G and Z. G and Z. Just move it up. I'm doing G and Z. It's not G and Z. Just let me fetch that back up into the G and Z. Just fetch it back up. It's actually G and Y. So pressing the 7 key to look from the top, or hitting the Z. And what we're going to do is G and Y, just to move it up like that. And we're going to actually, now, if we actually rotate this, as you can see, it rotates around that origin point. Control Z to undo. What we want it to do is actually do it round the 3D cursor. And this is done quite simply by going to Object, Set Origin to 3D Cursor. This will allow us to actually rotate now, like that, around the point there. So what you can do is now, I forgot to actually give this some loop cuts. So press into Tab key, and we're just going to give this some loop cuts. Control and R, just to move it up like that. The reason we've given it loop cuts is because we're going to want this to bend around like a cloth, or like a leaf would do. Let's just try that again. So, and of course it's easier to draw for your computer as well. So Shift and D. In fact, let's just make sure that's it. That's not set to 0. That's what's up here. Right. Pressing the N key will open this tab up, which is the transform tab. But right. So Shift and D. Duplicate. Rotate in the Z by 72. Shift and D to duplicate and rotate in the Z by 72. And Shift and D to duplicate, rotate in the Z by 72. And Shift and D one more time, rotate in the Z by 72. That's made us 5 leaves, but as you can see, because these are at the same height, they're actually making distortions in each other. So G and Z, just to move one up. I'll move that one down, G and Z, and move that one, G and Z. Just being slightly on different heights means that they actually don't overlap each other. So G and Z, Control Z. And what we've got there is we've got our basic plant. I'm just going to join these all together, or basic leaves, and join them. And I did that by actually Control Z, just to show you again. Is you hold the Shift button down and select them with your left mouse button, right click, and then join. So we've now got our leaves. What we're going to do is now actually go into our cloth modifier, and we're going to add a cloth into our physics tab, add a cloth, and we're just going to actually make the gravity go in the opposite direction, minus 0.2, and as you can see, it floats up in the air. But we don't want it all to float up in the air. What we want to do is anchor parts of the actual model. So we're just going to anchor them now. And we do this quite simply by going into, looking from the top, going into edit mode. I'm just going to actually make this a lot easier to see by going on to the X-ray mode. And what we're going to do is select the bottom line there, hold the Shift key down there, and just select all the actual bottom lines like that. We're then going to actually go onto this triangle here, and we're going to add what you call a vertex grouping, and we're going to add in a vertex group by pressing the plus key, and I'm just going to rename this as my anchor. So it's just anchoring these points, and I'm just going to assign them to that group. So select the group and assign. And what this allows us to do is when we go back into the actual cloth modifier in the physics tab, as you can see, we've got this cloth enabled. We can go back down, and you've got a thing called shape. So select the shape and select the anchor, and that should just make, back out of edit mode, and it should just make it go up like so. As you can see, the actual leaves are passing through each other, which we don't really want to happen. So we're going to actually go into the collisions tab. We don't need the shape, so we can actually shrink the shape back down. Go into the collisions tab, and we'll actually select self collision. So that should stop them actually colliding with each other. So there we go. And it makes a pretty strange plant. As you can see, that one's on top, so that one seems to go further. So what we need to do is actually put something in the way. I'll just show you what it looks like. As you can see, that one just goes up. So we need to put something in the way to actually stop it just closing up on that area. And the easiest way we can do that. Right, so we need something for these to actually wrap around. So what we can actually do is add in a mesh, and the other mesh is a UV sphere. G and Z. And what we'll do is add a collision modifier to this sphere, like that. And as you can see, it should just wrap itself around the sphere and stop. So that's making our plant. If we shrink down our sphere or increase it, it'll change the actual leaves. Add a smooth shader. As you can see, the actual leaves actually wrap around the sphere, so you can actually achieve different effects, and I think that's about right. So in fact, I'm just going to actually change the actual size of the leaves because they're all exactly the same, so that's pretty, it's going to look pretty odd. So I'm just going to stop the animation, shift and left click, and we're just going to actually change the size of some of these leaves. So selecting the L, we'll select the leaf, and scale in the X. You can actually just change the actual size of leaves. So L, X, scale in the X, just changing the size of some leaves. Scale X and scale X. Oops, Control Z. That's the L key. Scale in the X, like so. Scale in the X. And as you see, by distorting the leaf slightly, you're making something that looks a bit more realistic as a plant. I think that's about right. So I might just increase the gravity slightly. Increasing the gravity on the cloth modifier will of course make it -0.4, make it curl up a bit more, and just stop it to in the place you actually like it to be. And what I'm going to do is now apply the modifier by going on the spanner or wrench, and then just apply it, which of course will fix it. And then can actually delete the actual ball that it's curled round. So we've now made the leaves. I'm just going to rename them leaves. So we've made the leaves, and now what we're going to do is just hide them, because at the minute I don't want to see them. So I can actually hit the eye there and hide it in the render as well. I'm now going to add in another mesh, which is a plane. Add the original texture to it, which is the material texture, and looking from the top, what we're going to do is go into the UV editing just the same, and it's up to you what petal you actually pick. I think I might pick the actual red petal up there, or I might pick this blue one down here. In fact, I'll pick the red petal up there, which is off a poppy, I think. But let's actually just A to select all, U, project from view, which will make it a smaller square, A, and I'm just going to actually move this up here. And what I'm going to do is scale it down. And this time I'm going to actually shape our petal a bit more. So I'm just going to select this edge and scale it down. Like so. Then select this edge here, Control and R, just to put a loop cut. I can't put loop cuts in there, can I? So Control and R on the editor, put my loop cuts in there, A to select all, and then this will allow me to actually edit my loop cuts. What's up, my little friend? And just scale it, just to encompass petal. In fact, I'm doing this all wrong. A, U, project from view, A to select all, G to move it up to here, scale it down to make my petal, G, that will do quite nicely I think. Let's scale it down just like that. So I made my quick petal. So I'm just going to go back into layout and G and Y. I'm just going to shift and D, rotate by 120. I've done it wrong again, so press the X to delete that one. X to delete. What I forgot to do is actually move the origin point back to the 3D cursor. So object, set origin, 3D cursor. So shift and D, rotate Z by 120. Shift and D, rotate Z by 120. Shift and D, rotate Z by 120. Oops. X to delete. And what we're going to do is just actually move these to slightly different heights. G and Z. G and Z, just the same as before. And we'll join the three together by holding the shift button down and then just joining them together. Shift and D to duplicate again. Rotate by Z by 60. And then G and Z just to move them up so they're on a slightly different plane. So we've made ourselves some red petals, and all we need to do now is actually wrap them around another ball. But obviously we've got to actually use the cloth modifier once again, so we'll join these all together and join them together. So we've now got 6 petals, and we're going to make our simple poppy type plant. Anyway, so just like the actual grass, we're going to actually add in a mesh to wrap these around. But first of all, we're going to actually attach the actual cloth modifiers to these. So I'm just going to go from the top into layout because it's easier to see it in layout, and scroll across. And as you can see, we've got the edges there of our petals. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually select these and add them to another group. So let's just do that now. So actually hit the actual triangle, got a vertex group there, and we're just going to select all 6 internal faces like so, and just add in a group and assign them. So I've assigned the group, and all we need to do now is actually attach them to our cloth modifier, which we've not added yet. So let's just add the cloth modifier. So physics and the cloth, hit the shape again, add the modifier, which in this case I just left it to the actual default, which is group. And we're going to actually go into object collision, put self collision, and we're going to actually change the gravity to -0.4. And if we actually hit the spacebar, what should happen is that they should all curl up. Let's just increase the gravity. Make it -1. I seem to be having a problem with the petals. It could be that we've got a problem with the groups, so let's just have a look at the groups. As you can see, the petals causing problems in the groups. Let's have a look. You seem to have a problem with this one. That's the group. What it might be is that they're actually too close to each other, so -4. And all we'll do is add the sphere, add the mesh, and add the sphere. UV sphere, G and Z. Make it into a collision object, just the same again. Just hide it. Smooth shade these. And as you can see, we've got what looks a bit like a poppy. And I think that looks quite good enough for me. So I'm just going to actually stop it in the place I like it, which is about there. And apply it. And then what I can do is actually select the sphere and delete it again. X delete. So we've now got a poppy, G and Z, just to oops. Hold on, I haven't actually got rid of the actual cloth modifier. For some reason that's in fact, I'm just going to add it there, and I'm just going to apply the modifier just about there. Apply. In fact, I'll undo that. And undo, 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 undo until the sphere reappears. And we're just going to add the collision modifier again. Physics modifier, add the collision, take it to the front. I'm just going to scale this up until I get the desired look I want from my poppy. And just hide it, which I think is about there, but maybe the actual, this needs to be a little bit higher. G and Z, just a little bit higher. Let's just hide that. That's it. That's a perfect poppy, I think. So select your poppy, and what I'm going to do is hold it there, and I'm going to apply the modifier, apply, and then the sphere I'm just going to get rid of. X to delete. So I've got myself a poppy, G and Z, just to move it up. Control and H will actually, Alt and H will actually make the actual leaves reappear. I'm just going to scale that down because it's a little bit big. G and Z, just to move it down. And the last but not least, we're just going to add in a cylinder. And the cylinder, we're just going to give it 3 faces because we're going to alter this cylinder. G and Z. Now we can give it a texture again if you wish. Scale and Z, which I might do. I haven't quite decided yet. I'm just going to scale this down until it's a little thin. Scale in the Z. My little poppy stem. And what I'm going to do is actually go on face select. Select that face there. Select that face there. Then extrude along the normals. And if we'll actually look from the front, I'll add the same texture into it. So new, no, sorry, add the same texture into it, and going to UV editing, A to select all, U to project from view, and I'm just going to A to select that, and G, scale it down like that, and put a couple of loop cuts in there. Go on proportional editing, so I'm going to actually just press the Alt key down and left click in to select the ring, and G just to move it round, just to get a bit of shape. And lastly, just to add a bit of geometry to this, I'm just going to shade smooth this. Now you could leave it as a triangle if you want it to actually be a really low poly model, or you can add in a modifier And the modifier in the spanner wrench is going to be a subdivision surface modifier. Take it up to 2. And just scale it slightly. Scale it in the Z. I've took it up to 2. And then I'm going to apply it. Select point, select that point in the center. If it'll let me, it should do. In fact, I'll do this on layout because it's easier to actually do it on layout. Select it on point, select up there, proportional editing, and just scale it down. Like so. G and Z just to move it down. I'm just going to grow that selection. So Control and plus plus plus. And I'm just going to add a black dot in the middle of that. So I'm just going to add another material, put new, and it's going to be a black material. And just assign it to the center. In fact, I'll just grow that a little bit more and assign that. So I've got a little black dot in the center of my poppy. And then all we need to do is apply all modifiers and just join this all together. So holding the shift down and just join this all together. And then just join. So we've simply made ourselves, let's maybe move that up slightly. I'll move that down slightly. L, G, Z. So I've simply made myself a simple poppy-like plant with some very easy techniques. And if you enjoyed the tutorial, please subscribe to my channel. And don't forget, hit the bell and hit the like. Thank you. This is Blender TC signing off. Hope you enjoyed this simple tutorial. All we need to do now is just set some actual ambient occlusion, screen space reflections, maybe some refractions. Go into the texture of the plant itself. Add a little bit of a shine to it because most plants have a little bit of a sheen. Take the roughness down, and as you can see, it actually starts to actually get some kind of reality. And finally, add in an HDRI, environmental texture. I'm just going to open any texture. Let's have a look. One from HDR Haven. I'm just going to do the one which is the Kaylee picture. Add in a plane. Let's scale this up. Rotate it. And simply, I'm just going to add in a... Just change the colour of this to something a bit on the brown side. New. Then we'll try rendering it. F12. And as you can see, we've got a very, very realistic looking poppy type plant. Can't remember if poppies have got that type of leaf though, so similar to a poppy. Alright, okie dokie. See you soon. Bye from Blender TC.